Hey, dear members of the Soul Stories family. Today, we will bring you a romantic love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. The April rain in New York poured relentlessly, as if determined to drown the entire city in a gray curtain of water. Eva Sinclair, 24, sat huddled on a high stool at the bar of the Empire Lux Hotel, one of Manhattan's most luxurious establishments. The dim golden light glimmered on her third martini, but it couldn't warm her frozen heart. Just hours earlier, she had discovered messages on her boyfriend of 5 years, Ethan. Sweet words not meant for her, but for another woman. The shock drove Eva out of their shared apartment, wandering through the rain until she ended up here, where alcohol was her only friend that didn't betray. Eva took a sip of her martini, the bitter taste sliding down her throat like the pain she was trying to swallow. She wore a simple blue dress, her brown hair a mess from the rain, and her large round eyes now red but still glinting with a trace of pride. She wasn't the type to crumble easily, but tonight her heart felt shattered. "What did I do wrong?" she mumbled, her voice lost in the soft jazz of the bar. The bartender, a young man with a polite smile, glanced at her with concern but didn't dare ask. Across the city, in the presidential suite on the top floor of the Empire Lux, Grayson Reed had just wrapped up a 3-hour virtual meeting with shareholders in London. At 32, he was the epitome of success, CEO of Reed Empire, a chain of luxury hotels spanning the globe. Tall, with neatly combed black hair and sharp gray eyes, Grayson exuded an aura of authority that made others wary. But behind his flawless exterior was a heart frozen 3 years ago when his ex-wife, Vanessa, not only cheated but siphoned millions from the company's accounts before disappearing. Since then, Grayson trusted neither love nor coincidences in life. Grayson loosened his tie, tossing it onto a leather chair, and stepped into the bathroom. The hot water cascaded over his shoulders, easing some of the tension. He liked this room, spacious, quiet, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking New York's twinkling skyline. It was a place where he felt in control of everything, from work to emotions. Little did he know, a small storm named Eva Sinclair was about to invade his world. At the bar, Eva paid her tab and stood unsteadily. "Thanks," she said to the bartender, her voice slightly slurred. She fumbled in her bag for her room key, too drunk to notice it wasn't hers. It had fallen from the pocket of a hotel staff member who'd stood near her when she ordered another drink. The card read Presidential Suite. Eva didn't bother checking, assuming it was her key to a soft bed waiting for her. She stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor without hesitation. The doors closed, reflecting a girl with flushed cheeks from alcohol and teary eyes. "Just need to sleep," Eva told herself, "and everything will be fine." But she had no idea she was heading straight into a fateful mistake. The elevator dinged, opening to a hallway lined with red carpet. Soft golden lights guided Eva to an intricately carved wooden door. She swiped the card, surprised when it opened immediately. "This hotel's fancy," she muttered, stumbling inside. The room was opulent, marble floors, black leather sofas, and a king-size bed draped in white silk. A faint masculine scent lingered, warm wood with a hint of mint, making Eva pause. It was eerily similar to Ethan's cologne. In her drunken haze, memories of her ex flooded back like a knife. Eva kicked off her shoes, letting them tumble on the floor, and shuffled toward the bed. She didn't notice the sound of the shower stopping or the figure emerging from the frosted glass door. Grayson, wearing only a navy bathrobe, froze when he saw a stranger in his room. The girl, Eva, her bare feet sinking into the soft carpet, didn't seem to hear him. She turned her glassy eyes to meet his, and before Grayson could react, she lunged forward, wrapping her arms tightly around him. "Why did you leave me?" Eva sobbed, her face pressed against Grayson's chest. Her tears soaked through his robe, hot and startling. "What did I do wrong? I tried so hard." Her voice broke, like a lost child finding family. Grayson stood rigid, arms stiff at his sides. The smell of alcohol was unmistakable, but what made him hesitate wasn't her drunkenness. It was her eyes, red and wounded, as if they saw through the hidden corners of his soul. For a moment, he glimpsed Vanessa's departure, not her betrayal, but the pain he'd buried. "You've got the wrong person," Grayson said, his tone flat, trying to push her away. But Eva clung tighter, mumbling about Ethan and promises. He frowned, realizing she was too drunk to know where she was. Grayson glanced at the phone on the table, about to call security, but paused. This girl wasn't dangerous, just broken like he once was. Finally, he sighed and gently pried Eva's hands off. She was so exhausted she nearly collapsed, forcing Grayson to catch her. "Fine, you win," he muttered, half annoyed, half resigned. He guided Eva to the bed and laid her down. She curled up like a kitten, whispering something incoherent before slipping into sleep. Grayson stood there for a moment, studying her face. Her brows furrowed as if still dreaming of pain. He pulled the blanket over Eva and returned to the sofa. The cold leather wasn't comfortable, but Grayson had no interest in sleeping near a stranger, harmless as she seemed. He turned off the lights, leaving only the faint glow from the window. The rain outside continued, its patter blending with Eva's steady breathing. Grayson lay back, hands behind his head, wondering why he hadn't called security from the start. He wasn't one to soften easily. His work had taught him to be tough, to stay in control. But something about this girl, her raw pain, or the way she'd clung to him like he was her only anchor, made him pause. "Who are you?" he whispered into the darkness, not expecting an answer. Across the room, Eva slept soundly, unaware she'd just stumbled into the life of a man who would change everything. The morning sunlight slipped through the curtains, casting a glow on the white shag carpet in the presidential suite of the Empire Luxe. Eva Sinclair jolted awake, her head spinning as if she'd just weathered a storm. She blinked, trying to make sense of her surroundings. The bed was too large, the sheets too soft, and the warm woody scent in the air didn't belong to any place she'd ever stayed. "This isn't my room," she muttered, her heart starting to race. She sat up abruptly, her crumpled blue dress clinging to her body. A neatly folded white men's dress shirt on a nearby leather chair sent a wave of panic through her. Fragments of last night flooded back like scattered puzzle pieces. The martini, the rain, and a man. Eva pressed a hand to her mouth, straining to recall, but all she could grasp was a vague image of a sharp-featured face and a deep, warm voice. "No, no, no," she told herself. "What did I do?" She quickly checked herself. Her clothes were intact, no signs of anything amiss. But that didn't ease her embarrassment. Eva scanned the room, realizing it was luxurious beyond anything she'd seen, except in movies. High ceilings, abstract art on the walls, and a glass window overlooking New York's glittering skyline. "Where am I?" she whispered, her trembling hands rummaging through her bag for her room key. But the bag was empty. The card she'd held last night was gone. On an ebony table near the sofa, she spotted a pen and a hotel notepad. With no time to think, Eva scribbled a few shaky lines. "Sorry for the disturbance. It wasn't intentional. Thank you for not kicking me out." She didn't sign her name, hoping the mysterious man, if he even existed, wouldn't call the police. Eva grabbed her shoes and bolted for the door, like she was fleeing a crime scene, not daring to look back. Downstairs in the hotel's management office, Grayson Reed had been up since 5 a.m. He sat behind his desk, laptop open, but his mind wasn't on the financial reports. It kept drifting to last night. The strange girl who'd burst into his room, hugged him, cried, and then slept in his bed as if it were her own. Grayson frowned, his fingers brushing the note she left on his desk. The slanted, hurried handwriting felt oddly sincere. "Who is she?" he murmured, his low voice echoing in the quiet room. Grayson wasn't easily shaken. 3 years after Vanessa's departure, he'd built a wall around his heart, letting no one or no emotion slip through. But last night's girl, with her red eyes and choked voice, had made him hesitate. He should have called security immediately. So, why had he let her stay? Why had he lain on the sofa, listening to her steady breathing through the darkness? Grayson folded the note, tempted to toss it in the trash, but instead slipped it into his coat pocket. "Ridiculous," he muttered, telling himself to forget it. He stood, adjusted his tie, and prepared for a long day. Today, he had to interview candidates for the interior design position at Reed Empire, a key project to refresh the hotel brand. Grayson had no time for nonsense. Meanwhile, Eva rushed to her actual room on the 12th floor, her heart still pounding. She checked her luggage. Thankfully, everything was there, but the room key from last night was nowhere to be found. And the memory of the man in that lavish room lingered in her mind. It was just a dream, she reassured herself, though she knew it wasn't. She showered quickly, changed into an elegant gray business dress, and tried to regain her professional composure. Today was her critical interview with Reed Empire, a chance for her, a novice designer, to prove herself. Eva studied herself in the mirror, tying her hair into a neat bun. Though her eyes betrayed exhaustion, she whispered, "You've got this," taking a deep breath. She couldn't let personal drama, Ethan, last night's drunken mess, or anything else derail her. Eva left the hotel, hailed a taxi to Reed Empire's headquarters in central Manhattan, unaware that fate was waiting for her. Reed Empire's headquarters stood in a gleaming glass skyscraper, its grand lobby floored with marble and adorned with modern art. Eva stepped inside, her heels clicking rhythmically. She was ushered to a meeting room on the 30th floor, where other candidates already waited, impeccably dressed and clutching thick portfolios. Eva instinctively tightened her grip on her own designs. Tough competition, she thought, forcing a confident smile. Grayson entered the meeting room precisely on time, as always. He wore a deep navy suit with a black silk tie, exuding authority. The candidates stood to greet him, but he only nodded curtly, taking the central seat at the table. Beside him were Lucas, his trusted assistant, and another company design director. Grayson skimmed the candidate list, barely interested. He wanted someone with a fresh vision, not just rehashing tired interior designs. "Next, Ava Sinclair," Lucas announced evenly. Grayson looked up, and time seemed to freeze. The girl who walked in, brown hair tied high, large round eyes, and a slightly tense gait, was the one who'd stumbled into his room last night. He paused, his cold gray eyes scanning her, the corner of his mouth twitching as if he'd uncovered an intriguing secret. Eva, meanwhile, felt the floor drop beneath her. The man before her, tall and imposing with eyes sharp as a blade, was the one she vaguely recalled from last night. His face was clearer in daylight, angular jaw, thick brows, and a mocking smile she couldn't decipher. No way, she thought, her hands gripping her portfolio until her knuckles whitened. This was the CEO of Reed Empire, the man she'd hugged and sobbed over in her drunken haze. "Miss Sinclair," Grayson said, his voice low and deliberate, as if savoring the moment. "Do you make a habit of wandering into the wrong places?" The room fell silent. Lucas glanced at Grayson, mildly surprised by the unusual remark. Eva's face flushed, feeling every eye on her, but she quickly steadied herself, forcing a strained smile. "Only when I'm overtired, sir," she replied, keeping her tone professional. "But I assure you, it won't affect my work." Grayson raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting such a smooth response. He nodded, signaling her to begin. Eva launched into her presentation, a design concept blending minimalism with nature-inspired elements, using warm tones to create an inviting hotel atmosphere. Her voice grew steadier, though her heart raced whenever she caught Grayson's gaze. Grayson listened, but his focus wasn't entirely on the designs. He realized this girl didn't just have the eyes that had stopped him last night. She had talent. Her sketches weren't flawless, but they held a creativity he rarely saw in other candidates. Yet what unsettled him more was an odd sense of familiarity, as if she'd left some mark on him, despite their fleeting, mistaken encounter. When Eva finished, Grayson set his pen down and asked a single question. "Are you sure you won't walk into the wrong room on this project?" His tone carried a hint of teasing, making Lucas hide a smile. Eva took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. "If I make a mistake, sir, I'll fix it. But I don't make a habit of repeating them." Her response was firm, with a touch of defiance, prompting a rare smile from Grayson, one Lucas had never seen from his boss. "Thank you, Miss Sinclair," Grayson said, dismissing her. Eva nodded and left the room, feeling like she'd just survived a battle. She had no idea if she'd be chosen, but at least she hadn't let him see her tremble. After the interviews, Grayson sat with Lucas and the design director. Sinclair, he said evenly. I want to keep her. Lucas raised an eyebrow. She's got potential, but there are others with more experience. You sure? Grayson didn't answer immediately. He gazed out the window at the sunlit skyscrapers. I have a feeling about her, he said, though he wasn't sure why himself. Maybe it was the note in his pocket, or the way she'd stood before him. Partly embarrassed, partly resolute, Eva Sinclair stood before the elevator at Reed Empire's headquarters, clutching a stack of sketches and a cold cup of coffee. Today was her first official day working for the prestigious hotel conglomerate, and despite her heart still racing from the dramatic interview a few days ago, she told herself to push everything aside. Professional, she muttered, taking a deep breath as the elevator dinged open. But when she stepped into the design office on the 28th floor, Eva received news that nearly made her drop her coffee. Miss Sinclair, welcome to the team, said Helen, the design director, a middle-aged woman with a sharp smile. Your first project will be redesigning the interior of the presidential suite at Empire Luxe. It's the most important room in our hotel chain, and CEO Reed will personally oversee it. Eva froze, feeling as if someone had dumped ice water over her. The presidential suite, the opulent room with the white silk bed, black leather sofa, and her mortifying memory of stumbling and drunk and hugging a stranger. She forced a calm expression and nodded at Helen. Yes, I understand. I'll do my best, she said, though her mind screamed, why that room? And why him overseeing it? She didn't have to wait long for answers. Late that morning, when Eva arrived at Empire Luxe to survey the room, she found Grayson Reed standing there, right in the space she'd once invaded. He wore a light gray suit, hands in his pockets, his gaze sweeping over her like he was appraising a painting. Miss Sinclair, he said, his low voice carrying that familiar hint of mockery. Welcome to my territory. Eva swallowed hard, her cheeks burning. Thank you, Mr. Reed, she replied, emphasizing Mr. to keep some distance. But Grayson only smirked, stepping closer, forcing her to take a step back. You seem tense, he said, his eyes glinting as if savoring the moment. Or are you afraid of walking into the wrong room again? Grayson knew he was teasing her too much, but he couldn't resist. There was something about Eva Sinclair, the mix of her strong exterior and vulnerable eyes, that made him want to crack her professional shell. He'd been surprised when he agreed to hire her, a decision he couldn't fully explain even to himself. But now, seeing her in this room, clutching her sketches, Grayson felt an irresistible curiosity. What would she do? Blush, stammer, or stand up to him? Eva, as he'd guessed, didn't back down. She took a breath and met his gaze. If I make another mistake, sir, I'll fix it myself. But this time, I'm here to work, not to cause trouble. She stressed the last two words, her voice firm with a hint of defiance. Grayson raised an eyebrow, impressed by her comeback. Good, he said, stepping aside to let her measure the room. I look forward to seeing what you do with this place. Don't disappoint me. He turned away, but didn't leave immediately. Instead, he sat on the sofa, flipping through a magazine on the table, as if planning to supervise her right there. Eva gritted her teeth, trying to ignore him. She started her work, measuring wall distances and jotting ideas in her notebook, but Grayson's presence was like an invisible current, making it impossible to focus. Every time she glanced over, he was watching her, not in a scrutinizing way, but as if searching for something. Arrogant boss, she thought, gripping her measuring tape tightly. She was determined to prove she wasn't incompetent, despite the memory of that night making her want to crawl into a hole. In the days that followed, Eva threw herself into work with near-desperate energy. She wanted her design to not only meet expectations, but to stun Grayson and herself. She proposed a new style for the presidential suite, maintaining its luxury but adding warm touches like natural oak, soft golden lighting, and cream silk curtains for a cozy feel. Her ideas were bold, a stark departure from the room's current cold aesthetic, and she knew she was taking a risk. Grayson, true to his word, appeared frequently while Eva worked. Some days he came to check progress, others to review material samples. But Eva noticed he never just came and left. He always found a way to strike up a conversation, each one leaving her both annoyed and amused. One afternoon, as Eva sketched on her iPad, Grayson walked in holding a coffee. "You're working like you plan to tear this room apart," he said, setting the cup on the table beside her. "Careful, or I'll have to charge you for repairs." Eva looked up, frowning. "If you don't like my ideas, just say so. I don't need coffee to work better." She pushed the cup away, though the faint vanilla scent tempted her. Grayson gave a low chuckle, a rare warm sound. "I didn't say I don't like them," he replied, leaning against the wall, his eyes scanning her screen sketches. "But if you want to sleep here for inspiration, at least book it in advance. I don't like surprises." Eva's face flushed, nearly dropping her stylus. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice tight, "I think you should find a new hobby, besides reminding me of that." She turned away, hiding an involuntary smile. There was something about Grayson's teasing, not malicious, but as if he was testing her reactions. Grayson wouldn't admit it, but he started noticing Eva's small details, the way she bit her lower lip when focused, or how she muttered to herself when she thought no one heard. "No, this color's off. Needs to be brighter, he'd overhear." He saw her work hard, sometimes staying late at the office, which surprised him. She wasn't the type to just apologize and run, as he'd assumed after the wrong room incident. One late evening, when most employees had left, Grayson passed the design office to grab some documents. The room was dark, except for one lit corner where Eva sat, slumped over the table, still holding a pen, surrounded by sketches covered in notes. A strand of brown hair fell across her cheek, and her soft, steady breathing filled the quiet space. Grayson paused, about to call her, but stopped. Something about the scene, her dedication, her fragility, made him reluctant to disturb her. He slipped off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders, careful not to wake her. His cologne, oak and mint, lingered faintly on the fabric, but he didn't think much of it. Grayson left, his gaze softening in a way he didn't even notice. Eva woke hours later, the clock striking 11 p.m. She blinked, disoriented, realizing she'd fallen asleep. A strange jacket covered her shoulders, heavy and warm. She pulled it off, and a familiar scent hit her, the same one from that night in the presidential suite. Her heart raced, though she didn't know why. She looked around. The office was empty, the desk lamp casting light on her unfinished sketches. "Him," she whispered, clutching the jacket. But she shook her head, telling herself it was her imagination. Grayson Reed, the cold, teasing man, couldn't have done something kind like this, could he? Eva stood, folding the jacket carefully, her mind a mess. She didn't know that from now on, every thought of Grayson would make her heart beat just a little faster. Friday night in Manhattan glowed with vibrant lights, but inside the Empire Luxe's banquet hall, the atmosphere carried a calculated elegance. Crystal glasses sparkled under chandeliers, polite laughter mingling with the murmurs of business partners. Eva Sinclair stood in a corner, holding a glass of white wine, trying to blend into the crowd. She wore a sleek black gown with a subtle V-neck, her brown hair falling in soft waves, an effort to look professional at Reed Empire's gala, where major partners gathered to discuss new projects. Eva didn't enjoy events like this. She'd rather be in the office, sketching more designs for the presidential suite than forcing awkward smiles at strangers. But Helen, the design director, had stressed her attendance was crucial. "You're the new face, Eva," she'd said. "Show them Reed Empire's talent." So here Eva was, trying not to spill her wine whenever someone struck up a conversation. Grayson Reed, as usual, was the center of attention. He stood near the main table, chatting with a group of investors. His black suit hugged his tall frame, his cold gray eyes scanning the crowd like a king surveying his realm. Eva glanced at him from afar, her heart quickening. After weeks working under him, she'd grown used to his teasing and his unexpected appearances, which left her both annoyed and curious. But tonight, he seemed not to notice her, and that left Eva with a faint emptiness she didn't want to acknowledge. The gala dragged on past 10, and Eva felt stifled. She excused herself to the hallway for a breather, craving a moment of quiet away from the forced smiles. The hotel's corridor was spacious, lined with red carpet and landscape paintings on the walls. Eva leaned against a railing, gazing through a glass window at the city's dazzling lights. She thought of her project, the lines she wanted to add to the presidential suite, and a small smile crept onto her face. Work was the one thing that helped her forget old wounds and the new feelings stirring inside her. "Hello, you're the new designer, right?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. Eva turned to see a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, wearing a slightly rumpled gray suit. He held a glass of whiskey, his smile carrying an edge that unsettled her. "I'm Carl Weston, partner from Weston Group. I hear you're working on a big project." Eva nodded, keeping her tone polite. "Yes, I'm Ava Sinclair. Nice to meet you." She shook his hand, but his grip lingered too long, sending a shiver through her. She pulled back, offering a strained smile. "I'm working on the presidential suite. It's an exciting project." Carl stepped closer, the smell of liquor on his breath. "Exciting, isn't it?" he said smoothly. "A young woman like you must have plenty of creative ideas. Why don't we grab a drink outside? We could discuss the project further." Eva stiffened, catching his intent. She stepped back, her voice calm but firm. "Thank you, but I don't drink off hours, and I think we should keep things professional." She turned to head back to the banquet hall, but Carl suddenly grabbed her wrist. "Don't rush off," he said, his smile turning sharp. "I'm just being friendly. A girl like you should know how to please a partner, right?" In the banquet hall, Grayson had just declined a drink from an investor. He was tired of meaningless small talk and planned to leave early. As he stepped into the hallway to call his driver, a familiar voice, sharp and tense, stopped him. "Let go of me now," Eva's voice rang out, making Grayson pause. He turned, and the sight before him set his blood boiling. Eva was struggling to free her wrist from a middle-aged man. Her face was a mix of anger and fear. The man, clearly drunk, was saying something with a sleazy grin. Grayson didn't think twice. He strode forward, each step carrying the weight of a storm. "What's going on here?" Grayson asked, his voice icy. He stopped beside Eva, his gaze locking onto the man. Carl Weston flinched, releasing Eva's wrist, but trying to maintain his composure. "Just chatting, Reed," Carl said with a shrug. "This girl seems uncooperative." Eva opened her mouth to retort, but Grayson acted first. He pulled Eva behind him, a swift protective gesture. "She's with me," he said, his voice so low it thickened the air. "Don't let me see you near her again." Carl smirked, about to speak, but didn't get the chance. Grayson threw a punch, swift and precise, sending Carl sprawling onto the carpet. His whiskey glass shattered on the floor. "Get out," Grayson growled, his eyes sharp as a blade. Carl scrambled to his feet, muttering something before hurrying off, not daring to look back. Eva stood behind Grayson, her heart pounding. She was stunned, not just by his actions but by his words. "She's with me." They echoed in her mind, powerful and disorienting. She stared at his broad, steady back, realizing she'd never seen him like this. Not the cold CEO or the teasing man, but someone ready to stand up for her. Grayson turned, his gaze softening as it met hers. "You okay?" he asked, his voice still edged with tension. He checked her wrist where Carl had grabbed her, as if ensuring she wasn't hurt. Eva nodded, her voice shaky. I'm fine. Thank you." She wanted to say more, to ask why he'd done it, but the words stuck in her throat. Grayson nodded, motioning for her to follow. "Come on, I'll get you to a car." They walked outside, bypassing the banquet hall. The New York night was cool, streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement from a recent drizzle. Grayson's driver was waiting, and he opened the car door for Eva. She slid into the back seat, still dazed. Grayson sat beside her, silent, but his presence made the small space feel strangely warmed, And the car. Faint streetlights spilled through the window, illuminating Eva's face. She looked at him, an unnamed emotion swelling inside her. "I know I mistook you for someone else that night," she whispered, barely controlling her words. "But now I'm scared. I might have mistaken the right person." Grayson turned to her, his eyes complex, gentle yet guarded. He opened his mouth, about to speak, then closed it. Silence settled, broken only by the steady hum of the engine. Eva lowered her head, her cheeks burning, berating herself for saying something she shouldn't have. The car stopped at Eva's apartment building. She stepped out, turning back to Grayson. "Thank you again," she said, her voice soft but sincere. He only nodded, his eyes following her until she disappeared through the building's door. Eva reached her apartment, collapsing onto her bed, still in her black gown. She stared at the ceiling, thinking of Grayson, his punch, his cold yet protective voice, and his gaze in the car. She realized she was starting to care for him, a feeling both sweet and terrifying. "He's my boss," she told herself, trying to quash the thought, but her heart didn't listen, racing whenever his image surfaced. Meanwhile, Grayson returned to his office at Reed Empire's headquarters. Despite the late hour, he sat in the dark, the computer screen's glow casting light on his face. He picked up his phone, typed a message to Eva. "You okay?" Then he deleted it. He told himself he couldn't let emotions take over. She was just an employee, a girl who'd stumbled into his life. But deep down, he knew he was grappling with something bigger. Monday morning at Reed Empire's design office, Eva Sinclair walked in with a fresh stack of sketches, trying to focus on work despite her tangled thoughts. The incident at last week's gala, when Grayson protected her from a harassing partner, still lingered like a quiet wave in her mind. She told herself to keep her distance, that he was just doing the right thing as a boss, but her heart refused to listen. On Eva's desk sat a steaming cup of coffee with a small note. "Vanilla latte. Don't overwork yourself." No signature, but she knew only one person was thoughtful and bold enough to do this. Eva glanced toward Grayson's office at the end of the hall, where the glass door revealed his silhouette on a phone call. She smiled but quickly shook her head, muttering, "Don't get your hopes up." Grayson Reed, from behind the glass, wouldn't admit he was noticing Eva more than necessary. He'd started picking up her small habits, the way she tapped her pen when thinking, or how she tucked a strand of hair back when stressed. After hours, when the office emptied, he'd quietly review her designs, fixing minor flaws, a misaligned line, a color slightly off, then leave them as if untouched. He told himself it was a CEO's duty, but deep down, he knew the real reason wasn't that simple point. One morning, as Eva presented updates for the presidential suite, Grayson stood in the corner, watching from a distance. She spoke of adding handcrafted details, like a carved wooden panel inspired by pine forests, to bring warmth. He said nothing, only nodded, but his gaze lingered on her longer than usual. Eva felt it but tried to ignore it, afraid she'd misread the meaning in his look. The chance for them to confront their feelings came unexpectedly. Reed Empire was preparing to expand a project at a resort outside New York, and Grayson decided to personally survey the site with the design team. Eva, as the lead on interior styling, was required to join. She wasn't thrilled about a business trip with Grayson, but couldn't refuse. The trip began on a crisp spring afternoon. The sky was clear, and the air was cool. The resort lay nestled in a pine forest, with winding paths leading to quaint wooden cabins. Eva felt relieved to escape the city, though Grayson's presence, sitting in the front seat and talking to the driver, kept her on edge. He wore a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, skipping the suit jacket, looking more approachable than usual, which only made it harder for her to focus. They surveyed the site all afternoon. Eva noted spatial details and natural light, while Grayson offered input on feasibility. "You want to turn this place into an indoor forest?" he asked, half serious, half teasing, when she suggested using reclaimed wood. "Not a forest, but the feeling of one," Eva replied, not looking up from her notebook. "Guests want to escape the city, not bring it with them." Grayson smiled, not arguing, and Eva wondered if he was genuinely impressed or just being polite. But their plans were cut short when the sky darkened abruptly. A sudden storm rolled in, wind howling through the pines and rain pouring in sheets. The team scrambled for shelter, but fallen trees blocked the road back to the city. With his usual decisiveness, Grayson led them to the nearest wooden cabin, a small house with a fireplace, an old wooden table, and a worn fabric sofa. Inside the cabin, the damp air was warmed by the crackling fire in the hearth. The rest of the team quickly found places to rest, but for some reason, Eva and Grayson stayed in the small living room. Eva sat on the sofa, hugging herself for warmth, her business dress now wrinkled. Grayson shed his outer jacket, hanging it near the fire, then sat in a chair across from her, just far enough to maintain distance. Silence settled, broken only by the rain battering the windows and the firewood snapping. Eva stared at the flames, feeling the cabin was too small, too intimate for what she'd prepared herself for. She wanted to break the quiet, but didn't know how. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft, as if afraid to shatter the moment. "Have you ever felt like you couldn't trust anyone anymore?" Grayson looked up, his eyes reflecting the firelight. He didn't answer immediately, but something in Eva's question demanded his attention. "Yes," he said, his voice low. "And I was right." Eva gave a sad smile, looking at her hands. "I thought I knew someone," she continued, almost whispering. 5 years, I gave him everything, time, trust, even dreams. But then I found out he didn't just betray me. He never thought I was enough." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Since then, I've been scared to love, scared to even trust myself." Her words cut like a small knife, not for their drama, but for their raw honesty. Grayson listened, and for the first time in years, he felt his heart stir. He thought of Vanessa, her false promises, the way she left without explanation. He'd locked away that pain, but Eva's story cracked open a door he thought was sealed. "I used to think no one hurt like I did," he said, his voice so quiet Eva leaned closer to hear. "Until I heard you." The word "you" slipped from Grayson's lips naturally, and both felt its weight. Eva looked up, her eyes meeting his, and in that moment, the cabin seemed to shrink, leaving just them and the burning fire. The warmth, the rain outside, and their sudden honesty erased every barrier. Grayson moved before reason could stop him. He stood, crossing to sit beside Eva on the sofa. She didn't pull away, though her heart pounded. He looked at her, his gaze tender yet intense, as if asking a question he didn't dare voice. Then, drawn by an invisible force, he leaned down, his lips brushing hers. The kiss was sweet, slow, but brimming with emotion, as if they were sharing things they'd never dared say. Eva kissed him back, her hands instinctively clutching his shirt, and in that moment, all fear and doubt melted away. There was only the truth that they wanted to be here, together, now. But the kiss ended as quickly as it began. Grayson pulled back, his eyes flickering between desire and fear. "We shouldn't," he said, his voice hoarse, standing and turning away. Eva sat there, her breathing uneven, feeling like she'd fallen from heaven to earth. The next morning, the storm had cleared, leaving a pale gray sky. The roads were open, and the team prepared to return to the city. But Grayson was no longer the man who'd kissed Eva. He was cold, using reports as an excuse to avoid her. On the drive back, he sat in the front, leaving Eva in the back with unanswered questions. Eva stared out the window, her heart aching. She blamed herself for letting emotions take over, for thinking the kiss meant as much to him as it did to her. Not again, she thought. I misread him. She vowed not to let her heart break further. Though pain spread through her chest, at a gas station stop, a light rain began to fall. Eva stepped outside, standing under the cold droplets, fighting back tears. She didn't want anyone to see her weakness, especially Grayson. Enough, Eva. No more, she whispered to herself from inside the car. Grayson saw her silhouette in the rain. His hands tightened on the wheel, wrestling with himself. He wanted to run to her, to say the kiss wasn't a mistake, that he was scared because she made him feel things he'd sworn never to feel again. But he did nothing, staying put, letting the distance between them grow. The gray light of a Wednesday morning filtered into Reed Empire's design office, but it wasn't enough to lift the heaviness in Eva Sinclair's heart. She sat at her desk, staring at the final sketches for the presidential suite, lines she'd spent weeks perfecting, now a reminder of what she was trying to hold on to. Since the resort trip, Grace and Reed had become a stranger. No more surprise visits, no more teasing remarks, and his eyes, when they rarely met hers, were as cold as a New York winter. Eva tried not to care. She told herself that the kiss in the wooden cabin, the moment she thought her heart had found a home, was just another mistake. But every memory of Grayson, how he'd pulled her behind him at the gala or quietly fixed her sketches, stabbed her with a sharp ache, as if she were losing something she'd never truly had. That afternoon, Eva was summoned to Grayson's office. She walked in, clutching her files, ready to discuss project progress. His office was vast, with glass windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, but it felt as cold as its owner. Grayson sat behind his desk, immaculate in a black suit, his eyes fixed on his laptop as she entered. "Miss Sinclair," he said evenly, not looking up. "I've reviewed your performance, and I think you'd be better suited for our new branch in Boston. The project there needs a creative designer, and you're a strong fit." His words hit like a knife, sharp and sudden. Eva froze, feeling the floor crumble beneath her. "Boston," she echoed, her voice hoarse. "But what about the presidential suite? I'm almost done with it." Grayson finally looked up, but his eyes held no warmth. "We'll find someone else to take over," he said, as if it were obvious. "This move benefits both you and the company. You'll get formal notice tomorrow." Eva wanted to argue, to ask why he was doing this, but the words stuck in her throat. She looked at him, the man who'd made her heart race, protected her, kissed her, and realized he was deliberately pushing her away. Not because of her work, but for a reason she couldn't grasp. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice cold to mask her pain. "Thank you for the opportunity." She turned and left, each step heavier with her breaking heart. Grayson watched the door close behind Eva, his grip on his pen so tight his knuckles whitened. He told himself this was right. Eva Sinclair didn't belong in his world, a place of pressure, media scrutiny, and old wounds that hadn't healed. He thought of Vanessa, his ex-wife, torn apart by tabloid scandals, abandoning him when it all became too much. He didn't want Eva to face that, didn't want her dragged into a storm he couldn't control. But logic didn't ease the emptiness in his chest. Grayson stood, walking to the window, gazing at the city sinking into sunset. He thought of Eva, her resilient eyes, the way she faced him fearlessly, her rare smile. In the cabin, he tried to keep his distance after the kiss, but every day, she became an essential part of his thoughts. Pushing her away was the only way to protect her and himself. Back in the design office, Eva began packing her things. She boxed up her sketches, peeled off sticky notes from her desk, each act like a goodbye to the dream she'd built at Reed Empire. She didn't cry. She'd learned to hide tears long ago. But her heart was heavy. She wondered if she'd done something wrong, if she'd been naive to think Grayson could feel something for her. As she sorted through her things, Lucas, Grayson's trusted assistant, walked in. The blonde, friendly guy who usually delivered news, looked at her with concern today. "Eva, are you really going to Boston?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Eva shrugged, forcing nonchalance. "It's Mr. Reed's decision. I don't have a choice, do I?" Lucas sighed, glancing around to ensure no one was listening, then leaned in. "Look, I shouldn't meddle, but I can't let you leave without knowing the truth." He paused, weighing his words, then continued. "Grayson isn't transferring you because of your work. He's scared that if you stay here, you'll get caught up in trouble, like what happened with his ex-wife." Eva frowned, stunned. "Ex-wife?" Lucas nodded, his tone serious. "Vanessa. She was a media target, scandals, rumors, the works. It destroyed her, and Grayson too. When she left, he didn't just lose her. He lost faith in everything. He thinks if you stay close to him, the press will hound you, hurt you like they did her." Lucas's words were a painful revelation, both stinging and illuminating. Eva sank into her chair, hands trembling. She recalled Grayson's gaze in the car after the gala, his silence after the kiss. It wasn't because he felt nothing, it was because he felt too much. He was pushing her away, not to punish her, but to protect her in a misguided yet meaningful way. That night, Eva stood in her small apartment, staring into the mirror. Her eyes were tired, but sparked with new resolve. She thought of the times she'd given up, when Ethan betrayed her, when she doubted herself, but this time, she didn't want to run. Grayson might be afraid, but she wasn't. If he wouldn't step forward, she would. If you won't dare, she whispered to her reflection. I will. She smiled, though her heart trembled. She knew it wouldn't be easy, facing Grayson, her own feelings, and the world out there, but Eva was tired of letting fear lead. She wanted to fight, not just for him, but for herself. She turned to her desk, opened her laptop, and started sketching a new idea. Not for a project, but for her own life. She envisioned a room that wasn't just beautiful but bold, like the courage she was about to summon to confront Grayson. At the same time, Grayson sat in the presidential suite at Empire Luxe, where it all began. The dim golden light fell on the white silk bed where Eva had slept that night. He'd come here without reason, or maybe because he couldn't be anywhere else. He looked at the bed, picturing her curled up, face streaked with tears yet oddly peaceful. He thought she was just a fleeting mistake, but now she was the only thing making him feel alive. Grayson sat on the sofa, his hand brushing the wooden table where her apology note had once lain, now lost to some trash bin. He wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. Pushing Eva away didn't bring relief. It only left him emptier. But he didn't know how to fix it, didn't know if he had the courage to face her and his own heart. The early summer breeze in New York glided through the trees along Fifth Avenue, carrying the city's relentless pulse. But inside Reed Empire's towering headquarters, the air was starkly different, tense, formal, and brimming with expectation. Today marked the launch of the company's flagship hotel project, where Eva's designs, born from her heart, would be unveiled. It was also the day she chose to confront her past and Grayson Reed. Eva stepped into the Grand Convention Center lobby, her heels clicking with resolute rhythm. Her hair was neatly tied back, her elegant black dress hugging her slender frame, but what drew eyes was her gaze, strong, calm, and fiercely determined. She wasn't here to reclaim anything. She was here to close an old chapter or begin a new one. Grayson stood backstage, the spotlight casting shadows on his handsome, but typically stoic face. He was preparing to introduce the presidential suite, the new addition designed by Eva. He assumed she wouldn't come. He didn't expect her to. But as his eyes scanned the audience, his heart skipped a beat. Eva was there. Eva joined him, the night breeze rustling the curtains. Grayson, she smiled faintly, I won't promise I'll stop walking into wrong rooms, but I promise no matter how many mistakes I make, I'll always choose to stay with you. Grayson looked at her for the first time, his eyes held no defenses. He leaned down, kissing her forehead gently. Thank you for stumbling into my life. Ava Sinclair. A year later, the Reed Empire Hotel tower gleamed under the sunset, still a symbol of luxury in the heart of New York. But today something was different. The name of its most exclusive room, the presidential suite, had been changed to the Ava Suite. A polished brass plaque adorned the door, engraved with a small line below, where a mistake became destiny. Eva stood quietly before the door, her fingers brushing the plaque. She smiled, her heart fluttering softly. She was no longer the clumsy girl who stumbled into the wrong room on that rainy night. She was now the lead interior designer at Reed Empire, respected in the architecture world for her creativity and emotive approach to spaces. The door opened. Grayson stood inside, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a navy velvet box. Eva stepped in, but before she could speak, he approached, standing before her, still with those cool eyes, but now they knew how to smile. Grayson knelt, opening the box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring, set with a small teardrop-shaped diamond. You walked into the wrong room, he said, his voice low but warm. But I don't want you to walk out again. Please never leave my life. Eva laughed through tears, bending to hug him tightly. "If I promise never to leave," she whispered, "will you promise to always wait for me in the right room?" Grayson smiled, tightening his embrace, as if the world held no more fears. That evening, they stood by the wide-open window. Outside, a light rain began to fall, just like the night they first met. Awkward, blurry, and full of surprises. Eva rested her head on Grayson's shoulder, her hand clasping his, their fingers intertwined. "You know," she said softly, "if I could choose again, I'd still walk into the wrong room." Grayson lowered his head, kissing her hair, and murmured, "Thank you for stumbling into my life." And amid the sound of rain, their beating hearts, and the city's twinkling lights, they knew true love sometimes starts with a mistake. But if it's the mistake that leads to the right person, it's the most beautiful thing in life. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.